chair apart?
I don't know. I
Yeah.
guess so because of social distancing.
Yeah, you have my bad side. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
How you guys doing?
Hey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Oh, thanks, Mateo. You know what payback is.
The one thing yesterday I gave a conference about kidney disease.
Yeah, I don't think it's really comforting.
Nah, he's kidding.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. It's time for our patient panel, and we have an awesome moderator today. We have Dr. Desai, who's going to moderate our patient panel. Dr. Desai is a transplant nephrologist at Loyola University Medical Center. I hear she's one of the best. She's definitely one of the sweetest. All right, here we go.
Good morning, everyone. How's everyone today? Hopefully doing really well. So I'm honored to be introducing our panel, and they are all going to share their stories in their kidney transplant process or kidney disease process. And also what we have privileged here is a living donor to speak with us, as well as a caregiver, because we know that living with kidney disease, being transplanted with kidney disease, it requires a lot of family caregiver support and a whole team to do well and be successful. So what I was going to do is introduce each one to you, and I would ask everyone from the panel to maybe give a little bit of your background, tell everyone's maybe some of your story a little bit, and then we'll have some questions, okay? So the first person I have is Mr. Atiba Buchanan, and he is our dialysis patient. Mr. Buchanan, go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Atiba Buchanan. I do my dialysis through Fresenius. I've been on dialysis now for approximately 12 years, a little bit about 12 and a half now. I'm a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, first shift. And I've been blessed to have some really good outcomes. I've scraped my knees very much along the way to learn a lot about how to have ownership, I guess, of dialysis. It has afforded me an opportunity to live my life to the fullest, despite being on dialysis. I actually host 2 radio shows, both on WVON in Chicago. I'm actually the afternoon host from 3 to 6, Monday through Thursday. And then I have another show that I do Friday nights from 9 until midnight. And then I also cater on the side. So everything that I desire to do, that I love to do, I've still made a way to do it despite being on dialysis, because dialysis does not have to be this life-ending or life-stopping thing. And hopefully I can give you some information today to help you live the fullest life that you can lead while on dialysis.
Thank you so much. That's so impressive. I'm so impressed with all that you're doing. And then next to you, we have Mr. Harry Morris. Mr. Morris is a transplant recipient. So Mr. Morris, if you could tell us a little bit of your journey, your transplantation process, how many years you've been with your transplant, that would be wonderful.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Harry Morris. I'm 61. I am My journey's been a little different. I was not on dialysis. My situation was congestive heart failure. I had what's called a LVAD, which is a left ventricular assistance device, long-term for a heart pump. Because of my heart failure, I ended up having to have a heart transplant and a kidney transplant. I am, as of November, I'm 7 years post. I'm doing very well, no rejection, no major issues, trying to live my best life, as they say. Healthy, I've been pretty healthy, not feeling bad. I stay as active as I possibly can. Currently, I work for the National Kidney Foundation. If you've ever seen the giant orange van that goes around the state, I'm one of the drivers that drives that. So I enjoy doing that. It's one of my ways as far as giving back. I enjoy myself. If anybody out there is waiting on transplantation, please try and keep a positive attitude. It does help. Be compliant, listen to your doctors, and just stay positive and you should be okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. And next to you, we have Miss Tanya Rhoden, and Miss Tanya Rhoden is a living donor. She just donated to her husband. And so if you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thank you so much for the opportunity to come here today to speak to each and every one of you. This is actually my first event with the National Kidney Foundation in person. But Monica and Melissa, the dietitian, was very impactful on being a living donor and providing information and education resources. We just did have surgery June 21st. My husband is here today. He had to step out, but it was a very long journey. As a living donor, I did run into some health obstacles along the way. And on top of a pandemic, we were delayed 60 days due to COVID to be able to have the surgery located at Northwestern. Being a living donor has been an honor. It also is a choice. But I was able to be provided as much information as possible. And if any of you have any questions, I would be honored to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Rhoden. And then last but not least, we have Huerta, and he is going to be representing our caregiver support side. And so, Mr. Huerta, if you could give us a bit of insight into your story.
Yes, thank you. Well, my journey, or my wife's and our journey started 7 years. As a caregiver, it's a challenge because we are supposed to be the stronger in the relationship, or kept father and son, daughter and father, whatever. This position me was my wife. So I'm supposed to be the stronger, or the who have to give it to her that support. But believe me, sometimes we can. After this long 5 years, well, my wife, she got 13 major surgeries and many admissions for emergency room. It's very hard to be a caregiver. So, but when I see the improvement on her life, on her own, she fighting for her life. So that gives me the strongest feeling to help her more. So my call is, if you are caregiver, you must looking for support also, because we need a lot. It's not only dealing with your patient, but it's dealing with our own problems. So please look for help also.
Thank you, Mr. Huerta. All really amazing stories. I'm so honored to have heard your stories today. And I have some questions, but are there any immediate questions from the audience that anyone want to ask a question to our panel or our group? Yes. Monica's coming.
The question that I had was the gentleman at the beginning with the cap on. He said he was on dialysis, what, 10 or 12 years? I wanted to ask you, had that affected your freedom in terms of traveling, not only here in the United States, but were you able, or did you want to go overseas? And if so,
Okay, that's a
I
great
would-
question.
Not now.
Great question, and thank you. I haven't had the need or desire to do any overseas traveling, but I have had to travel in different states throughout the country. And if, I don't know who your dialysis may be through, but through Fresenius, I can only speak for them. They're everywhere. And you can very easily coordinate, as long as you give them enough notice, where you're going to be, and they can fit you into a shift wherever you're going to be. They're very easy to work with. And so again, interstate traveling is really not a problem. Again, I think there might be some other challenges, again, going out of the country, but I haven't had to have that come up yet. But I remember specifically, my son had qualified for this track thing out in Sacramento, and we had to go and support him and be there for about 3-4 days. And it was no problem scheduling, finding a Fresenius near my hotel, getting a shift. It was no problem, and they were all great. So yeah, it was no problem with that.
Anyone else with a question? Maybe Mr. Buchanan and Mr. Morris, if you could elaborate a little bit more on some of the thoughts or feelings you were having when you may have first heard that you were having kidney dysfunction or kidney disease, and maybe that dialysis was coming down in your pathway, or just more urgent care for your kidneys.
Yeah, well, I just spoke, so somebody else talk. I'll come after.
A lot goes through your mind. I mean, it's a whirlwind of different thoughts, emotions. You want to find out what's best for you, what's best for your family. My transplant center was pretty good. Like I said, I didn't have to do the dialysis. They did the workup on me for the heart pump, the LVAD. And that's an adjustment as far as going through that. Because of my heart failure, I didn't find out about my kidneys failing until after the fact. So my issue was just more being compliant, going in, doing blood work like a lot of transplant patients have to do. I had to check my INR on a regular basis to make sure it was thin enough to go through the LVAD. And I just did my best to whatever the doctors recommended to constantly do that. And everything worked out.
And for me, it was pretty dramatic when I found out about my kidney failure. They basically thought that I had a heart attack, and I had not. I was, if you looked at me physically at the time, I was in really, really good shape if you're just looking at me. And I went into the emergency room because I was up one night. I was eating a Polish, of all things. It was late. And so literally, I began to black out. I could feel myself not being able to hear and not being able to see. And I was able to yell out to my wife to call 911. When I came to, I was at the hospital. And again, they thought I had a heart attack. The emergency room doctor came up to me and she says, "So what kind of drugs are you taking?" I was like, "Excuse me, I'm not on any drugs." And she goes, "We're gonna find out, right?" I was like, "Whoa, you're serious?" I'm like, no, I promise you. I said, I wish it was that, because then I at least know what it was. I ended up being hospitalized, and the next day, my primary doctor came to visit me, and he's like, "Hey, you've lost 80% of your kidney function. You're going to need to go on dialysis in about 1.5 years." And so that gave me some time to think about, ponder. It was obviously a very devastating diagnosis to me at the time. I didn't know anything about dialysis. I didn't know anything about kidney failure. What had happened, because I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this, the months leading up to that, I was having headaches almost every day, if not every day. And I never went to the doctor to find out what was wrong. I was treating those headaches with Excedrin, which was like the worst thing. Turns out my blood pressure was through the roof, undiagnosed for months, and that's what led to the kidney failure. So when they thought that I'd had the heart attack when I'd eaten that 1,000 milligram of sodium Polish that night, my blood pressure was something like 230 over 150 or 130, 230 over 130. And that's what caused me to go into that episode. And so it was the undiagnosed, untreated high blood pressure that I had been neglectful in going to the doctor about that caused my kidney failure.
And how many of you are maybe on dialysis or are here for transplantation purposes? On dialysis or waiting on a wait list or maybe a living and transplant candidate or have received a transplant? And then how many caregivers do we have in the audience? Anyone interested in living donation that's here today? Good, so we have good representation. And so I'm going to ask a question for our living donor, Mrs. Rhoden. Can you tell us a little bit about your husband's similar story, how he found out? And then more specifically, what kind of made you decide to pursue donation and how much did you learn in advance before the process and what did you learn through the process?
That's a great question. My husband had a very similar. Can you hear me now?
I don't think our mic is on.
See, you want me to change this for you?
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So my husband's diagnosis was actually very similar. He did not know that he had any kidney issues. He had very high blood pressure. He went to the doctor for a regular checkup and they called him like 2 days later and said, "You have kidney disease." And my husband was in denial. He said, "I don't have kidney disease. What are you talking about?" A couple months later, he was put on additional blood pressure medication. His blood pressure also was in the upper 200 registry. And we had no clue why. Come to find out that he was in stage 4 kidney, stage 4. And we went to the, let's see, Edward Helmhurst in Naperville. And he was basically, we got told, "You're going to need a kidney transplant within 6 months or dialysis." That was his biggest fear. His mother was on dialysis for over 18 years, and he watched his mother suffer for several years. The quality of life that he saw his mother have was like a death sentence for him the day that he was told that he may have to have dialysis. Right then and there, I asked the nephrologist, "What do we need to do? How?" I don't even know anything about kidney disease, so I started Googling. I was referenced to the National Kidney Foundation where I was able to meet up with Monica and Melissa. I went through all of the testing at Northwestern. And that's actually my husband right there. So he just came in. So there were several days where I felt like I was going to lose my husband. I didn't know. So we went through testing after testing, and they said, "Tanya, you are a match, but." So at the time, I felt like I was very healthy. I never went to the doctor. I thought, well, I had learned that I was the same blood type as my husband. And so I started doing the evaluation process, and they told me that I had a high A1C. And I thought, I didn't really even know what that was. But I did know that I loved Reese Pieces. So I knew that that was probably a connection that was not going to be a part of the equation. So I knew I had to take the Reese Pieces down. So fast forward, during a pandemic, when the gyms are closed, they said, "You have to lose 25 pounds." So I started at 3 miles a day. I ended up doing power walking, running up hills, praying on my body, rebuking diabetes, and said, "You know what? This is not going to be a part of our love story. I want to do anything and everything that I can, what I can do to help my husband. We just celebrated our 5-year wedding anniversary
Yeah.
2 days ago. It's been an honor being a living donor. It has not been easy. I was blessed because I don't know if you know about living donation, but if you do have health insurance, they do pay for your testing. So my husband's employer was able to pay for all of the testing through Northwestern. And I got the most thorough health evaluation ever in my life. And it provided and prevented me from living with diabetes because I was able to take action. So not only was a living donor a blessing to my husband, it was a blessing to my life as well. So I would love to encourage any of you that are considering living donation, understanding that it is an honor, it is a privilege. And if we can say yes, you can make a difference, not only in the person that's sitting next to you, but families' lives, because your yes can impact someone's life for the rest of their life.
That's a beautiful story. And in fact, the number one sort of transplant that's done in living donation is usually unrelated, and it's a spouse to their spouse. So that's just as expected. I'm so glad you were able to do that. And then Mr. Huerta, why don't you tell us a little bit of your story, your wife's story, and then what made you decide to become the primary caregiver for her? What challenges have you faced, and what things might have surprised you in the process as well?
Oh, yeah. Well, everything starts, I remember perfectly, on February 14th, and a Valentine's Day. I'm a former truck driver. I was driving by Toledo, Ohio, when I received a call from my wife about 7 o'clock in the morning. When she was diagnosed with CKD, kidney disease, the nephrologist told us, probably she's gonna need start dialysis in 3 months. So we're gonna start having a fistula. So they make the fistula surgery in the arm, but the problem with my wife, she had a very thin veins, so it never works. So they decide to do a groin fistula, who takes 4 hours in the surgery, and about 3 o'clock in the morning, she wakes up with a very, very bad pain. The fistula split apart, and the doctors, they didn't notice until next day about 9 o'clock in the morning when they do the round, and they did a surgery again. So that makes her stay for a month and a half in the hospital, dealing with infections and all that kind of stuff. So as a caregiver, start looking for another job, because obviously I couldn't travel anymore because I need to stay with her, looking for more information. Unfortunately, I found National Kidney Foundation of Illinois, and they start giving me all the process information and everything to get a transplant for her. So I decided to quit my job for what I was working for the last 17 years. I was loving my career, but my wife were more important. So fortunately, I think God heard my praise. I found a job. I started with National Kidney Foundation as a volunteer, and an opening was for me, and I got it. So now, after that, I was very well informed, and I was taking my wife the most of the part of the time. The hard part to be a caregiver as a head of family is, for example, you got to work. You need to bring the income. You got to pay bills. You got to still doing your normal life, being the support of your wife or your kids. My kids, they obviously help us, but the main part I was doing by myself, taking to the appointments, cooking for her, doing a lot of stuff. She spent 5 years on dialysis. And after that time, in December 25th, 2019, she got the transplant. The most beautiful present gift on Christmas, but never stop my support of her. So that's why I try to explain to the caregivers, we have a very hard position, we have a very hard job, but we can do that. As soon I see my wife getting better and better every day, everything worth it. So this is one of my points, and I want to see my wife healthy again. And if I got tired or I got problems with my health later on, I can deal with, because she's more important now.
And Mr. Huerta is being modest because your wife has had a long course even after the transplant process. And we know that personally, but she's doing great. And it's really been an honor to take care of her and kind of see how things have gone. So you're still in that caregiver phase all the time. How do you find any time to care for yourself? And that would be for you as well, Mrs. Rhoden, and everyone here. You're struggling with a disease process, or you're in a caregiver situation, or you've been through a surgery. And how have you kind of found the strength and positivity day to day, and then begun to kind of care for yourselves as well?
Yes, we need to do that. I start listening different motivators, people who can help you to feel better every time, but never works. So in my mind comes for this year, coming out from this other, I said, well, I need to do something by myself. And I started getting closer to my, I'm Catholic, and I was doing more and more of my activities as a Catholic, and that helps a lot to me. And like I said, when I see my wife recovering every day, to me was like my support, I should say that. Yeah, seeing her healthy to me is my medicine. So.
Mrs. Rhoden?
I have to piggyback off of him. Just being able to see my husband not fall asleep as soon as I put on the movie. He used to be a really good date, but so I would look at him like, okay, babe. So just being able, the quality of life, understanding that celebrating his life, it was about him, but it was also the pleasure and the honor and feeling chosen to be his voice, his advocate, his wife, his caregiver, and his donor. It is not a cape that's easy to wear. So how did I find self-care? Self-care was very challenging for me. I did have to leave my career because I did have to take care of my husband. I did have to take him to dialysis at 5:30 every morning with my dog Cookie. And we made a routine of it. It became a part of our life. It became a part of our routine. But what did not change is the support and the love that we had for one another. When you are going through a disease, or you are diagnosed with a disease, the person that's beside you, the person that's taking you to dialysis, if you don't have someone that's taking you to dialysis, you have to rely on your most inner being. And in my case, that was my faith in God. I had to pray, I had to cry, I had to lash out, I had to share my story. And there was times where I felt like I was alone, that people didn't really understand what it was like to have a spouse that was on dialysis. that was usually thriving, that was usually, running miles, playing golf, to where you see that person not play golf anymore. You see that person trying to do the best they can, and they're stubborn and they want to tell you that everything's okay, but they're in pain. So I think that patience and my faith is what got me through. Self-care is so important. And find an outlet, find a support system. The National Kidney Foundation has an advocate program. Start Googling, ask questions, plug into people that can share your story with you. Because in times where you get the diagnosis, you feel like you're alone with your spouse, but there's such a beautiful world of people that have a similar story, a similar spouse, a similar situation, and you understand that you have a family that you never knew that you had. And that's the people that's in this room today.
And Mr. Morris?
Sorry, thank you. Yes, self-care is extremely important. Myself, I've always had a lot of faith in God, and without that, I don't know if I would be sitting here today. I had a lot of support from my family. My wife was my caregiver. I had issues with my LVAD and bleeding and fluid in my lungs, and she had to take care of me, and I'll always be grateful for that. As far as personal self-care, I like to volunteer. I'm an ambassador with Gift of Hope. I've volunteered with the Secretary of State's office. I have the job with the National Kidney Foundation of Illinois. I try my best to surround myself with positive, uplifting people. Going through a serious disease, it really does matter if you stay positive and you surround yourself with people that are positive and try and help you as best they can. Personally, I find a lot of relaxation. I'm an amateur photographer, and I really enjoy going out taking pictures. Gives me time to myself. I enjoy that. Gives me a little peace of mind, and it's worked. And if you can find something to focus on and uplift yourself, I definitely recommend it. Thank you.
And Mr. Buchanan?
Addressing self-care.
Self-care, or, just kind of how you mentally kind of went through or going through the process.
Sure. So let's see. So self-care for me looks like doing a lot of the things that I enjoy. I mentioned that I cater. The name of my company, I'm not saying this for you to call me. It's called Love Language Catering, because cooking is my love language. And so I love to feed people. I have 2 kids. My son, my youngest, he's on track. He's a thrower. He's like 6'3", 260. He loves my cooking. He gives me a lot of outlet. My daughter is the oldest. She's 23, and she's only 5'4", but ironically, she eats as much as he does. So don't be fooled. But they are everything for me, and my motivation for going to dialysis, for having good dialysis outcomes. I've been on it for 12 years. I could do it 12 more if I needed to. They are at the center of that. Now, God is the center of my source, and like everyone else, I would not be here without my faith. And that has been an amazing struggle for me. Not struggle, but a journey and a process. Because when you first get diagnosed with things, you wonder, why me? Why am I afflicted with this? Like I said, when I first got diagnosed, physically, looking at me, I was no one would ever think that I was sick in any way. I had a 275-pound bench press. I was lifting weights every day. No one would ever have guessed. So when it hit me, I just could not understand why. What did I do wrong? What did I do? What fault did I have? And then you come to realize over the years and through the journeys and meeting wonderful people like Monica and the National Kidney Foundation, it's not about you. What happened to you is for you to help somebody else. And that is the motivating factor for me. I have so many conversations all the time with people that either just got diagnosed with kidney failure and or have a loved one that just got diagnosed. And I can talk to them about, I can talk to caregivers about, hey, these are the things you want to look out for. And I can talk to people about the process of finding out when you're, when you're diagnosed, to how to better handle dialysis, to dietary thing. I can talk to them about such a myriad of things with my experience over 12 years. And that's what that experience was for. So do I thank God for my kidney disease? Kinda. Because if it's a way to help, for me to help other people, then I'm all for it. So those are the things that keep my mind right, that keeps my mind focused, keep me humble, and keep me going after the grind. Because I just can't stress enough. Don't let dialysis stop you from living your best life. You can live a full, robust life, even on dialysis. It's not too late.
You have an amazing group of 4 individuals here. I'm sure there's some questions in the audience. Good, wonderful. And Monica's going to come over. So don't be shy, ask anything you want. This is your chance to gather any information from our panelists and your opportunity.
Yes, and this is the way I'll get my steps today.
Yeah.
This message is for, our question is from Mrs. Rhoden. So I am blessed to be able to give a kidney to my sister this week. I'll be donating on Thursday. So what if anything can you share with me? I'm going to be a living kidney donor that I might need to know that I don't know now. I mean, people have shared information, but you've actually gone through it. What could you share with me that maybe I didn't know or will need to know, please?
Well, I will say that my scar, you will have a scar, but one of the things that I will say is you can do anything that you put your mind to. Your willpower, your belief, your positivity will take you wherever you choose. I have to say that I feel very blessed as far as when I went to surgery. I can't even tell that I've had surgery. I haven't had any difficulties. I was scared. I had a lot of questions like yourself, like what could I tell you? I think that the most important thing that I can say to you is that your yes is everything. Your purpose for life, being able to be that person chosen, you're chosen to be able to do such a great thing. Your support system, I would encourage, even as a living donor, that you will definitely need that support also. It's okay if you're tired. It's okay if you're not as strong as you once were. Whenever you're sweeping the floor, take the time to do what you need to do to heal. And it's not selfish. Allow yourself to heal too.
Most definitely. You deserve to heal after giving a precious gift like that. So please do.
Anyone else with questions?
Excuse me, good afternoon. I have a question for Mr. Buchanan. You stated that you've been on dialysis for 12 years. Are you on a transplant list?
I am. They keep telling me I'm at the top of the list, but we'll see.
This is good. Next, I'm gonna need somebody back there.
First of all, I just want to say thank you to my personal superhero here, which is my wife. Monica, it's fantastic. The podcast, the journey continues. And I just want to emphasize to everyone in this room, as Tanya said, you're joining a community and a family that you didn't even know that you had. And a lot of us spend our lives looking for a calling, and oftentimes your calling comes and grabs you. And the impact that we've been able to have on people's lives to tell this story and to share with people and to give people hope and encouragement. It's a blessing. So when you feel like, why is this happening to me? Understand, just as he said, it's a blessing in disguise. There's something else happening for you at the same time that you think something's happening to you. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Aaron. We do have a question from Zoom for Mr. Buchanan. They would like to know if you have a fistula and how's that going?
Absolutely. So here's the deal. I have a fistula here in my left arm. I have the rush. You can feel it. If I put it up to this mic, you could probably hear it. I think it was infected once in 12 years. And then we switched to a sharp needle, and that was about 5 years ago, and it hasn't been infected since. But nonetheless, when I got the surgery, that's where they connect a vein to an artery, and then it has to mature for about 3 months or so-ish. I got the surgery in January. I started dialysis in April. And here's the deal, because I think he mentioned it earlier. It's an outpatient surgery, and that's true when they tell you that. What they don't tell you is how much it's really gonna hurt when you get home. So feel free to, they can up the pain meds. Mine hurt so much, my wife got mad, my then wife at the time got mad at me because I was like, you need to call my mother. And she was like, I got this. I was like, call my mother. You need to call my mother right now. My mother had to come to my house. But nonetheless, I lift weights with it, curling, bench press, shoulders, you name it, the ropes. I live my life with my fistula, and it's never a problem. It will look different because mine is upward higher towards my bicep. But outside of that, as far as the function is concerned, it's no problem. And as some of you may know, it's way less likely to get infected. You can shower with it because I guess when you have it here, like for the emergency dialysis, you can't get it wet. It gets infected more. And also it cleans you actually get a cleaner blood cleaning with the fistula in the arm. So that if you've been thinking about it, please believe me, that's the way to go. It will make your life so much more comfortable, so much easier. It's easy. It helps you get better outcomes. And that's ultimately what this is about, is getting the best outcome that you can get. Absolutely. I went yesterday at 4:30 in the morning.
Did you go for transplant surgery and later you are still going for dialysis?
No, I've just been on dialysis for 12 years.
No, not transplant yet.
No.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions from the audience?
That fistula is just like a car. You got to take it in and get it serviced. Some people think that once you get it, that's just it. But you do have to go in and they make sure they clean, make sure that you don't have stenosis. I think that's what this calls, stenosis. But that's like a clot or something like that. They have to clean and make sure that it's still operable. Because I still have mine and I've had a transplant, but I make sure that I exercise and I use a squeegee to make sure that it still has that continuous rush. Because it just in case anything do happen to me, I got a plan B. Mm-hmm.
Hi, I was just at the Fresnius booth outside and I saw that they had a home dialysis kit. And I was wondering what the difference is between having that at home. Isn't it more convenient than going in to a hospital or something every time?
I've never been on home dialysis.
Okay.
They offer it to me every year, but I enjoy just going, doing my 4 hours and then living my life. As I understand it, you can end up getting a lot of equipment in your house and then you have to do it every single night. But again, that's just my experience. I just prefer going to the center and getting it done. And then there's so many things that can happen during the course of a dialysis session that I would prefer the technicians and nurses be there just in case. So that's just me.
Yeah,
So yes,
there
it is a matter of preference with dialysis.
Right.
If you choose to do it at home or do it in a center, we do have someone here who is a home hemodialysis patient who would like to speak to that. And then Dr. Desai can speak to
Wonderful.
it also.
Hi, I'm a home hemo patient. I have a catheter in my chest as well. As in Mr. Puerta's wife, the fistula and graft didn't mature in me. So I've been through 3 different modalities of dialysis. I started off with in-center initially, and then I went to PD. And then earlier this year, I had an issue where I had a hole from my PD up into my lung, and I was getting pleural effusion, which meant fluid was building around my lung. That happened twice. So they stopped that and I started home hemodialysis. Initially, my nephrologist wanted to take the catheter out, but I didn't want to try again because I've had 2 different grafts, 2 different fistulas in 1 graft, and none of them worked. So my time on the transplant list just increased to 12 years. That's why I was asking Mr. Buchanan about that as well. As far as home hemodialysis, I do it 4 times a week. It varies based upon your weight, your cleaning, all of that has factors in it. So on average, I do 3 hours a day, 4 times a week. There are a lot of supplies that accompany it. There are a lot of machines. I think that Fresenius does have the machine out there that's used for home hemo out there. So that's the machine that's used from Next Stage, which is a Fresenius company. And if I ever have issues, I get nervous about it because my profession was an auditor. So to become a nurse for myself is hard because I do it solo as well. So I don't have a spouse there to do it. I don't have a relative there. I'm doing it myself. But there are safeguards in place. There's a device called a red sense, which detects blood. There are other items on the cycler, which help protect solo patients who are doing it. So there are safeguards that are available. And there's always the Next Stage number for IT support and your nursing staff.
Thank you. We have one more. We have a comment here. I know Terry did home dialysis for quite a while, and then we're gonna have to wrap it up.
I won't take too long. I spent 5 years on peritoneal on a cycler. Your catheter has to get changed out every 6 months or so, sometimes even 3. And the cycler is 8 hours a night, at least it was for me based on my prescription. And actually, just given that I took on a little bit more fluid, I did quite a few midday dialysis as well, just to pull off the excess fluid that I had on my body. I found it to be very conducive for me, for my schedule. That time I had 2 high school age, my twin daughters were high school age, so I was very involved with the high school and with my daughters and was able to maintain my life. Had a hunting dog. We walked every day, 3 miles in the morning, 3 miles in the evening, and she was trained based on, she had to be patient until I disconnected the correct way, which is you have to be sterile like a hospital at all times, getting on the cycler, getting off the cycler. I was fortunate. I lived in a large house in Flossmoor down the street from my friend Monica, and I utilized my garage. I would just have Fresenius bring the pallets into my garage. So there is quite a bit of a month's supply plus a 7-day reserve. And as we just saw in this world with COVID, we never know what's going to be around the corner. So that 7-day reserve for somebody somewhere came in handy because as you see from shipping, even though the dialysis which is the formula that's used. Based on your body style, you need 3, which yellow, green, and red. Yellow is the weakest, green is middle of the road, red, you pulling some serious fluid off your body. But I found it to be conducive for the 5 years I was on it. I did, like the gentleman said earlier, after I had my transplant, I had a lazy kidney and they put me on the emergency. And 2 days into it, that had to come out because it did catch an infection. So all of it is with risk, but I truly believe that all dialysis is a reward for the person awaiting transplantation. Thank you.
Amen.
So I think we've had time. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. And thank you, Mr. Buchanan, Mr. Morris, Mrs. Rhoden, and Mr. Huerta for your wonderful stories. It's hard to get up here and open up and share, but these are inspiring stories and they will be around as well. So if you have questions for them, please feel free to ask. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.